The brighter a skyline burns, the deeper the dark beneath it. No city performs that paradox quite like Dubai on the first breaths of a new year, when the Burj Khalifa cleaves the night and the sky itself seems to applaud. As the calendar turned to 2026 and champagne misted the air, a man who has built a life on command and confidence felt his footing vanish. We are speaking of Barış Baktas, a face familiar to millions, a charisma that usually turns rooms to orbit around him. But in those first seconds of a celebratory year, fame proved powerless. Something intimate, fragile, and old finally cracked. Welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Tonight is not about headlines for the sake of noise, it is about the anatomy of a heartbreak that the Turkish entertainment world has argued over in whispers for far too long. This is a tale of a flight taken too suddenly, a plea made too late, and a message that closed a door with the quiet certainty of a final verdict. It is the night Barış dropped his armor, and the night Yagmar refused to let the past reclaim her. If you seek narratives that treat feelings as seriously as facts, you are in the right place. Make sure you are subscribed, and if you want to help us tell stories with the care they deserve, the join button is waiting. Your support is the oxygen of this channel. Now, follow us to the moment the illusion split down the middle. For Barış, the blueprint for New Year's Eve was simple and impeccably planned: greet 2026 in the glittering embrace of Dubai, pace himself through a carousel of high-profile parties, shake hands that might become contracts, and let neon nights rinse away whatever still ached. The city promised reinvention, its architecture preaches tomorrow. But as midnight arrived, the euphoria in the room withered into a hum he could no longer hear. The trigger was not a stranger by his side or a rival in the crowd. It came from a glow he could not outrun, the light of his own phone. Across continents, a photograph appeared. Posted by Yagmar. In it, she looked tranquil in a way that seemed learned rather than lucked into, a woman who had done her work and placed the crown of peace upon her own head. Beside her stood a man the public did not recognize, his presence the punctuation mark that turned rumor into thunder. The caption was spare, yet tinged with a warmth that people instantly read as possibility. Fans leapt to conclusions, columnists sharpened metaphors. But for Barış, the picture didn't just hint at a future for her, it scalded him with the present tense of his own stillness. Her serenity felt like a sentence written with a steady hand. Witnesses who expected his usual sparkle saw something else, a man receding into silence while lights still flashed. Unable to pretend merriment while his chest twisted into knots, he did the one thing his team didn't foresee. He ended the trip then and there. The Arabic nights, the penthouse promises, the conversations designed to become headlines, all of it turned weightless. A flood of feelings he had kept neatly folded away surged back, and with them, the gnawing fear that he no longer authored his own story. He booked a seat on the next plane bound for Istanbul, leaving behind a skyline that dimmed as the cabin door shut. At Istanbul airport, the difference in him was stark. The man who usually disarms photographers with a grin and a throwaway joke arrived stripped of his usual polish. Flashbulbs erupted, he did not offer the safety net of charm. He did not dodge, or flirt with the question, or spin a narrative on the spot to buy time. Instead, he let a truth slip like a crack through stone. "My chest hurts, and my spirit hurts," he said, voice low and worn. No slogans. No bravado. Just a body in the aftermath of a blow that had taken its time to land. From that point, the drama retreated from airport floors and camera lenses to the smaller stage of a phone screen. Adrenaline and regret are dangerous co-authors, and they seized his thumbs. He broke the quiet between them that had calcified over months. His message was not clever. It was unguarded, asking for a meeting face to face. He wanted to revisit the places where words had once failed them, to own the errors he had pushed aside for too long, to see whether the embers they had never quite extinguished could be acknowledged if not revived. There was no grand promise attached, no script, just the naked request for a conversation, one room, two people, the past placed gently on the table at last. He waited in that space where hope feels like holding your breath. What returned was not an invitation. It was a boundary. Yagmar's reply carried a cool clarity that comes only after hard-earned peace. For me, those pages are finished, she wrote. You learn from a mistake once, choosing it again is unwise. I welcomed the year by choosing a new life. I have turned my page, and I'm guarding it. No hedging, no performance of kindness that might tempt ambiguity to slither in. It was final, not spiteful, firm, not cruel. It wasn't an attack, it was a locked door. If there was a sound in the silence that followed, it was the echo of that single idea, once is enough. It is said he read her words over and over until they changed from letters into a feeling that sat in his bones. Without the closure he craved or the absolution he had secretly hoped for, he withdrew from his own spotlight. His feeds, normally a diary of motion and momentum, went still. Friends who could always count on a quick reply found their messages unanswered. Even those closest to him felt the hush, a pause that stretched into something deeper. For the first time, observers whispered, the man who seemed to win by showing up discovered the cost of arriving late. Meanwhile, the light around Yagmar did not feel like a performance. Sources insist her New Year's happiness was not a mood captured for clicks but a state she built slowly, brick by brick, far from comment sections and timelines. This was not the whiplash of a sudden decision. It was the end of a long renovation of the self. She didn't slam a door because of a new face in a photograph, she had already replaced old locks. The man at her side remains unnamed, and that secrecy reads less like a game and more like protection. When you have had your life examined under floodlights, you learn to shield anything precious with shade. She isn't sprinting. She is walking forward, and the simple act of living well has a way of resolving old battles without saying a word. As always, the court of social media split itself in two and started shouting across the aisle. One camp cheered the text they read as a declaration of boundaries, a woman refusing to volunteer for an old ache on the promise that this time would be different. She owes nothing to yesterday, they wrote. The other camp, the romantics who have carried the idea of Barış and Yagmar like a torch through storms, pleaded for mercy. They argued that vulnerability deserves a chance, that falling apart in public is itself an apology. They want the scene where two people meet in a quiet cafe and put the world back together between sips of coffee. But her words cut through that haze. Not this time. Not again. Industry voices, always tracking the shape of a star's silhouette, call this a hinge moment for Barış. The persona that once read as unshakable is being dismantled frame by frame, not by scandal, but by something gentler and more dangerous, honesty. Is this retreat a cocoon in which he will finally face the pieces he sidestepped, or a paralysis born of hindsight arriving too late? Both can feel the same from the outside. Those who have watched his ascent and stumbles are waiting to see which version of quiet this is, healing, or haunting. Time, of course, enjoys a twist. The gossip world wonders if one still lurks. Does a story this charged really conclude with a message and a sigh, or does life have a habit of looping back just when we stop looking? For now, the lines are drawn with unusual clarity. She has chosen the clean edges of a new chapter. He is studying the rubble of a bridge he convinced himself would hold forever. That is the reality that stings the most. Television scripts might chase neat reunions, but life is far more disciplined. It sets endings where they belong and expects us to respect them. We will be here watching the quiet around Barış, not to intrude, but to understand whether solitude turns into growth. We will observe the small signs of light around Yagmar, careful not to mistake privacy for secrecy. For the moment, the story of who they were together is sealed and shelved. Thank you for walking this road with us on Turkish Spotlight Secrets. If this chapter pulled at something in you, leave a like, and tell us what you felt when you heard her words. Was she protecting hard-won peace, or did the past deserve a softer goodbye? Share your thoughts below, and if our way of telling these human stories matters to you, consider pressing join to keep this space alive. Until we meet again, honor what came before, but move in the direction of your own dawn.